Hello, I'm Cameron Sheets with Queerty, and it is the greatest honor to be joined today by the venerable Sir Ian McKellen to talk about his new film, The Critic, and so much more. First of all, I know earlier this summer you had your fall. You talked about feeling some pain recently. How are you feeling right now? You seem in high spirits.
That was getting on for 10 weeks ago, and my recovery is perhaps everybody trips all day long. You don't really notice it until you're in your 80s, because if you trip then, you probably fall, and if you fall, you probably break something. And I had a fractured wrist and a chip on a vertebra in my neck. That's all sorted itself out, slower than I would have liked, and now I'm left with a little bit of aches and pains, but that can be dealt with through exercise. So I'm going to take the rest of the year off, but have some nice jobs coming up next year.
Oh, I'm so relieved to hear that. That's great. It's fun to see you, right now talking about The Critic. I know this is a film you've been very passionate about, and I've loved to see some of what you posted about your own experiences with critics in the past, which I'll want to get into. But I do want to say, first of all, you were so wonderfully wicked and wounded as Jimmy in this film, and it's a delight to see you sink your teeth into it. From the writer of Notes on a Scandal, like that's enough to get me excited about this film. I imagine you're a fan of Notes on a Scandal as well.
Yes, and I have actually been in a film that Patrick Marber wrote called Asylum with the late Vanessa Redgrave's daughter, Natasha Richardson. And when he sent me the script, he said, "This is the best part I've ever written." So I almost didn't read it before saying, "All right, I'll play it." It's a film about a world I know very well, even though I was only just alive in the 1930s when the film takes place. I knew it was going to be fun. You've gotten onto the very heart of the matter. Jimmy Erskine behaves as he does, which is in a ruthless, cruel way at times, because the world has been ruthless and cruel because of his sexuality. He's a gay man. And of course, in the 1930s, in the United Kingdom, you had been born a criminal if you made love. So it's a private matter for him. He's closeted. If he visits the cruelty of society against himself upon his own victims, we shouldn't be too surprised. Along with that, he has a great love for the theatre and is desperately upset when what he sees on stage, in his view, good enough. And so the spite and the wickedness come out in his words. It is a talkie. Yes, he's a softy at heart, Jimmy, but he's got this armor of his wit and his perceptions and his honesty, really, about what he sees. You've always, as an actor, got to like the part you're playing, You must be careful not to make him too likable. But you can't play Richard III well unless you feel you understand him and are sympathetic to him and realize why he is as he is. Iago the same. Macbeth, these people who do the most terrible things. I think I understood Jimmy quite early on.
You can connect to him on a personal level as well, but I know you talked about some of these earlier critics that you experienced with as you were getting started as an actor who you drew some inspiration from for this role. I mean, I'm curious, has your relationship as an actor, as a performer with critics changed over the years as you became more established?
I don't pay them any attention.
No.
Now, we're living in an age when it's not just people who have a job to be a critic and write for a national newspaper. Jimmy's living at a time when they were the only critics. Today, everyone is a critic. Quite right. Every member of an audience is a critic, and they have views, they have responses. But now, sometimes, unfortunately, we read those responses online, often before the professional critics have had a chance to see the showy question. And so the power of the critics has gone considerably. I mean, there was a time when you couldn't hope to have a success on Broadway unless the New York Times gave you at least a good review. And I suffered that with my first play, and the New York Times review just wasn't good enough to attract the local audience. We all would love a rave from the New York Times, but if it didn't come, there are all those other critics who may have, whose voices may in the end be louder.
That's true.
So this is a film very much set in the past,
Mhm.
when a critic really could have the power to make or break, and that's part of the plot of and thrill of the story. When I started out, I was highly praised by the professional critics, and I'm very grateful to the reviews I had, because the word went around that, oh, here's an actor worth watching. But now I've been alive longer than anyone who might be writing about me, and I would like them to enjoy my work, but if they don't, I'm not going to get too upset.
That's probably a healthy attitude. Yeah. While we're thinking back to some of your earlier work, some of your theater work too, unfortunately, earlier this year, we had to say goodbye to the late, great James Lawrenson, who you starred in Edward II with. Fantastic actor. I know that play was both a sensation in the theater, and then, of course, again, when it was broadcast on the BBC, and it included what many have called TV's first kiss between two men. And I wondered what do you remember about how the press and public reacted to that play and that kiss in particular at the time?
The play you're talking about, by Christopher Marlowe, who was born the same year as Shakespeare, and whose career as a very successful playwright was cut short when he was murdered in circumstances that have never been quite analysed or understood. But in writing, he was himself gay, Marlowe, and in writing Edward II, yes, I think he wrote the first play ever with the leading part as a gay man. You just had to accept that, and maybe that's why the play hasn't been done that often. And when we revived it long ago in 1969 at the Edinburgh Festival, we were performing in the premises of the Church of Scotland, and a member of that church, who was a local councillor, a politician, said that two men should not be seen kissing on those premises. That got such notice in the local press and conversation that, of course, we ended up having full houses. People rooted us out and found us. But it was very touchy. Oh, Jimmy Lawrenson, whose lips I can imagine to this day. In the audition, he was told he would have to kiss me. He said, well, should I kiss him now? He did. And bless him, he got the part. It was a thrill to do that play, for it to be criticised and then accepted. Was very important. And people tell me that when the TV version was shown in America on American television, people said, I'd never seen two men kiss, and it helped me. Not unlike Jimmy Erskine in the film, The Critic, Edward II's life is affected totally by other people's reaction to his sexuality. And when his barons murder and slaughter his beloved Gavest, the part Jimmy Lawrenson played, he turns from a sweet, loving, enthusiastic young man into a terrible tyrant. And is it any wonder if you are cruel to people, they're likely to find someone to whom they can be cruel. That play should be done more often. It's very easy play to do. The language is easy, the story is thrilling, and they're great parts.
It was only a month or two ago that your former co-star Alan Cumming had called X2 X-Men United the gayest film he had ever done. I wondered if you felt similarly about that.
No, the gayest thing I've ever done is Edward II. And the first production ever of Martin Sherman's sensational play, Bent, which is about the predicament of gay men under the Third Reich and Adolf Hitler. Alan, as usual, was joking, and I don't know about gay, but camp, yes, certainly.
Camp.
Oh, those costumes, those helmets.
And you looked fabulous in them. So one of the co-writers, David Hayer, had mentioned that just, of course, the X-Men have always been this allegory for the gay community. And David had said that he was always certain that you understood them. That was a big part of why you were interested in them.
Brian Singer, the director, made that point to me straight away. And Marvel, I was told by them, X-Men was their favorite publication. And they said that the demographic for the readers of the comic were young blacks, young gays, and young Jews. All those categories have been ill-treated by the laws of the land and by people's behavior. The message that because you were different didn't mean that you were inferior and that you might, in some senses, be superior was a message that young people in those categories responded to, and I respond to as well. And then the argument between Professor X, Patrick Stewart's part, and Magneto, my part, is reflected in most civil rights movements.
Yeah.
Do we fit in? Do we argue the point, or do we go out on the streets and cause a fuss? Well, my temperament leads me to the former, but I was very happy to play the Malcolm X of the X-Men universe.
Well, Ian, thank you so much for the time today. It's meant the world to me. I'm so grateful.
All right, nice to have a chat. All right, lots of love. Bye-bye.
It's been so lovely. Thank you so much. Goodbye.